It has been just over 13 years since I first welcomed Mary Roach to Planetary Radio for a conversation about what was then her newest book. In 20 years of great weekly conversations with astronauts, authors, scientists, and engineers, I have never had a more fascinating or entertaining interview than that conversation with Mary. When we started this book club for you folks out there, our beloved members, selecting Packing for Mars and asking Mary to return was a zero-brainer. So, Mary Roach, welcome back.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's fabulous to be here. And I do remember that conversation well. It was very fun on my end too.
Oh,
and yeah, I can't believe that much time has gone by. I'll try to remember what's in my own book.
We'll help you along the way.
Okay,
and everybody
good.
else has just read it. I just reread it and had a wonderful time rereading it. Just a bit more bio, because of course that's required by the host union. How many New York Times bestsellers now? I think it might be 8.
I think it's 8. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Stiff, Gulp, Grunt, Bonk, Fuzz. I won't even go through them all. And of course, the one we're talking about today, which I guess you couldn't comfortably fit into a single humorous word, Packing for Mars. Don't forget the subtitle, The Curious Science of Life in the Void. Janet Maslin of the New York Times says it is as startling as it is funny. That's exactly as I might describe it if I was as articulate as Janet Maslin. Just a couple of other facts. We could go on and on. Mary's TED Talk made the, what's the term? The most watched list, 20 most watched list. And then one that I absolutely love because it has to do with my favorite science museum in the world. You were an Osher Fellow at San Francisco's Exploratorium.
Yes.
What does that mean? What did you do as an Osher Fellow?
That it just is this wonderful program where you go for 2 weeks, you have a little office and you wander around and you make a pest of yourself and you talk to people there and see what they're doing and you get new ideas and you get inspired because it is, as you said, the best science museum. It's fantastic. Yeah, I did a little talk. It's pretty loose and a wonderful opportunity for people who are kind of between projects looking for inspiration. And just absorbing all the exploratorium goodness, basically.
I love that place. God, another reason for me to be envious of you. You got to live in the Exploratorium for a while.
Yeah.
If you're going to San Francisco, if you've never been to the Exploratorium, especially if you have kids, you must go to the Exploratorium. There is really, Our Fleet Science Museum here in San Diego does a pretty good job of doing some hands-on stuff. Nobody touches the Exploratorium, and it's a playground of science.
It is. I mean, and it's not simplistic. I mean, it's arranged. There's stuff for kids, but there's definitely they are really wanting to impart the basic building blocks of science education, and they do a really great job. You can really, it's an education in itself, and it's also just quirky. Like they have this thing, the Museum of Wear and Tear, and it's just pieces of exhibits that have been worn down just over, being used, and something being pressed or pulled 1,000 times a day, and just it ends up working like a saw blade. But like, who thought of that? It's brilliant. The Museum of Wear and Tear. Anyway, they're wonderful. It's a dream. It would be a dream job to work there, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would. If I ever live in the Bay Area, I want to volunteer there.
Yeah.
But we got a book to talk about. I'm going to read this from the very front. To me, you, and she's talking about all of us, are the best thing to happen to rocket science. The human being is the machine that makes the whole endeavor so endlessly intriguing. To take an organism whose every feature has evolved to keep it alive and thriving in a world with oxygen, gravity, and water, to suspend that organism in the wasteland of space for a month or a year, or multiple years, I'll add, is a preposterous but captivating undertaking. You did such a wonderful job with this book of exploring exactly that. So many facets of why it's so crazy for people to want to go to and maybe live in space and other worlds that may present the same sorts of challenges. I'll just start by asking, what brought you to writing this book?
To be honest with you, what brought me to this book in a roundabout way was the Johnson Space Center training toilet. And I'll explain how this happened. Okay, years ago, I was a contributing editor at Vogue magazine, which if you look at what I wear, you couldn't imagine how that would have happened. But I was. And I was writing, I had an assignment, I wrote for the health editor. And so the assignment was osteoporosis and bone loss. And I was like, not very interesting. How can we make this a little more interesting? So I knew that there were astronauts, that astronauts dealt with bone loss. And so I thought, let me talk to an astronaut. And there's an MD, an astronaut who is an MD. I got him on the phone and we talked about bone loss and some of the countermeasures. And then somehow the conversation strayed from bone loss. And he mentioned that at Johnson Space Center, they have this video toilet. It's basically to train the crew how to kind of dock with the toilet, because it works differently. You can't really sit, you're hovering. And it's a small hole, there's airflow and you don't want to plug up the airflow anyway. So I'm like, there's a toilet with a video camera. And I'm like, I can't work this into a Vogue story about bone loss. But it lodged in the back of my head. And I thought, one day I will write about that. And fast forward probably 5-10 years at least, I was kind of poking around for a book idea. And I ran into someone who worked at the bed rest facility in Galveston, where they test countermeasures by having people lie in bed with their heads a little bit down. And it kind of mimics the effects of living without gravity. And he told me about that, and I thought that would be an interesting place to go. That's bizarre, paying people to be in bed for 3 months. So with those two things, I started thinking that what goes on Earth at NASA is as interesting in some ways as what happens in orbit, and no one looks at that. No one covers that stuff. So I thought, well, I'll do that. So that's what happened.
And that last point that you made about the stuff that happens on Earth. For Planetary Radio, I interviewed one of the humans, a woman who was in one of those, not bed studies, I guess. And what really stood out for me was her enthusiasm, was how she felt so passionate about that she was making a contribution to humans' ability to live and work in space.
Exactly. They call them terranauts. And astronauts would come and visit and talk to them and express their appreciation. And so for some people, that was really why they did it. I mean, to be honest, there were other people who were like, I have some debts. So if I just lie in bed for 3 months and get paid and there's no way for me to spend my money, that's probably a good thing. So for some people, it was an opportunity to kind of make some cash while not spending cash. Although you have Amazon while you're there. So there's a lot of Amazon deliveries to the bed rest facility. However, the people that I spoke to talked about how their enthusiasm for the project and what a thrill it was to have a visit from an actual astronaut. It was very cool. The whole thing. I loved that place and that visit. It was hard to imagine what it was like there, but it had a really great energy.
I remember I thought the same thing when I read about these folks in the first time I read your book, and it came up again the second time. Little Abner, I'm really dating myself. Little Abner's job was mattress tester. And so he was paid to lie around on mattresses all day.
Yeah. For people who like to play video games, this is paradise.
Yeah.
You're being paid to lie around, and they've got a good internet connection, and they've got, everything set up so you can be lying on your back, working a monitor. And it can be uncomfortable, especially at first. Your spine kind of stretches out, or you get some, but they give you a massage every day.
Oh,
So
that's nice.
That's nice.
And,
yeah.
You haven't used a bedpan all the time for months at a time. That would get to me.
Yeah, the one guy that I spent a fair amount of time with, he actually got disqualified for,
I remember that.
yeah, not using the bedpan. That is to say, getting up. Yeah.
If anybody listening to this should now understand that talking to you is as fun as the books. Peter Carlson, Washington Post, called you America's funniest science writer. I agree.
Pshaw.
There are lines. Well, name somebody else. There are lines that just crack me up. The footnotes. I hope everybody is reading the footnotes.
Don't skip the footnotes.
Don't skip the footnotes. Would be a mistake. I put down a couple. I could have put down 20. You were talking about the flag that was hung by the Apollo astronauts, and that, people said, well, why is it staying up like that? And you said, well, because it's hanging there. It's less a flag than a diminutive patriotic curtain, which just cracked me up. And then talking about the astronauts communicating, Morse code has always been a tough medium for humor. The context for that, God, I should have put down the context because now I can't remember, but it was one of the astronauts was tapping something out, I think. I forget.
I can't even remember.
It's been a while.
Might as well have been someone else's book.
Here's another example. You turn a phrase with the very best of them. From your description of the altitude chamber at the Johnson Space Center that you got to experience. By pumping air out of a sealed chamber, technicians can simulate the atmosphere at any altitude, all the way to near total vacuum. Here's the one that got me. A box of outer space, a big box of outer space. That's just perfect. That's absolutely perfect.
Oh, well, thank you.
Gravity. I think you gave, where is it? I even had the page, I thought. Gravity is the lust of the cosmos. It was really, that whole description of gravity was, I think, the best brief description of the force of gravity and its effect on everything in it, and everything in the universe, including us, that I think I've read anywhere. So, yeah.
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah.
Funny and factual. Let's talk about what it takes to become an astronaut. And we are going to get to your questions. I see them coming in, everybody. I just want to get it to one other topic here, and then I will intersperse, I promise. The difficulties in becoming an astronaut, the challenge of becoming an astronaut. Our boss, the Planetary Society CEO, Bill Nye, I think he applied 3 times, got turned down 3 times. NASA's bad, everybody. I mean, could you imagine really a better candidate to send up there for us? It's just, you explored this, obviously, and there are a lot of us down here who would like to go. And you explored the transition that has happened in astronauts from that early Mercury version of the right stuff to the astronauts that we see up there living on the space station today. And it's quite an interesting transition. Could you talk about this?
Sure. Yeah. Well, you went from an era where what was necessary, in addition to a military or a pilot background, was courage, bravado, kind of swinging dick confidence, just because you're on your own, or there's 2 of you. I mean, it's not a group effort. Cooperation and friendliness and patience, that wasn't paramount. It was, yeah, man, let's do it. I can do anything. I can fix this. Let's light this candle. That kind of yeehaw spirit. That's what you needed. Also, to be of a certain tiny stature and lightweight, but in terms of the personality. And fast forward to an era where you have a group of people up there for a long period of time, much longer. I mean, Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, we're talking hours, days, weeks. Now we're looking at months, and things happen interpersonally when you put people together in a small space and they can't leave that space. So the qualities became things like ability to relate at an interpersonal level, patience, agreeableness, just the kind of things that you'd want in a roommate. And that, like the example that I think I gave in the book was Peggy Whitson, Commander Whitson. At one point, I heard her. Someone was saying to her, those photographs that you sent, that you took from space, we're not finding those. This is something she probably spent the whole morning doing on the shuttle, and this is back in the shuttle era, or she was on the ISS. Anyway, she instead of, if it had been me, I would have been like, well, look again, because I did that. I'm not doing that again. I don't have time. I'm on a tight schedule. You guys are screwing up. She just said, not a problem. I'll redo it. Just that personality, unflappable. Certainly courage and confidence are still important, but the ability to kind of roll with things. I also experienced that when I wanted to be on Mars 500 as one of the subjects. This was happening outside Moscow, and I applied and I made it to the first stage. And they said, okay, we'll be in touch. And I said, great. And then I got, like a week later, I got a call at 3 a.m, which woke me up. And I was like, I wasn't very pleasant. I was like, you guys know I'm on the West Coast of the US. It's 3 a.m. And that was the test.
You failed.
I failed. Yeah. They're like, okay, bye.
You've met a lot of astronauts. I've met a lot of astronauts from the early period, and many more from the later period shuttle space station. The latter group, well, they're all great people. I've only met a couple of odd ones, and they shall go nameless. But particularly the group that now goes up to the space station, lives there, they are just the nicest people in the world. They're just sweethearts, men and women.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they are. They're, I haven't met that many, but everyone I've met, just unfailingly patient. I remember speaking to, his name is in the book, I forget, but he gave, he sat down with me, and it was like half an hour, and he answered these questions that, as it turned, I saw an interview with him later that someone else had done, and it was sort of the same answers. And I realized I've asked him the same thing that everybody's asked him about, what is it like living up there, but I had no idea. It seemed to be the first time he talked about it. His enthusiasm and his patience were really impressive, because I know he gets asked that, but he goes to classrooms. You're as an astronaut, most of your time, 99 point something% of your time is down on Earth, and you are the representative of the space program to the public. So that's, and it is in some ways a PR job, and they're really good at it and very patient.
Because you brought up Moscow, I'm going to jump to one other thing I wanted to ask you about, which was also striking in the book. You seemed, when you were writing the book, to have just unparalleled access to the Russian space program, to cosmonauts, at people who were running the space program. I gotta wonder if that would have been possible to do today. We're just not getting along as well.
Yeah, that I don't know, but I have to say the access, that was challenging. I initially, I flew to Berlin for a conference thinking I will make connections that I need. And I got business cards from people of the Institute of Biomedical Problems. Institute of Biomedical Problems, which they're the people who do all the physical stuff, the physiology and the psychology. And those were the people I needed to talk to. And I had their cards, and I came back from Berlin and I wrote to them, and nobody wrote back. So what happened, the only way I got access, I had to pay a fixer, like they do, that's somebody I knew who works in the documentary space, somebody who'd made a documentary on a similar subject. She said, you need Lena Yakovlena, get in touch with her. And Yena Yakovlena has a cell phone with the phone numbers of every cosmonaut, retired and active. And so that was how that happened. There was no other way for me to get to Star City and be able to talk to some of the, I mean, some of the original, some guys who were in the same group as Yuri. So that was something I don't normally do, but there wasn't any, to me, there wasn't any other way for me to talk to those folks. So, you're right. Today, I don't know if that would have been possible. I don't know. I mean, to just go to Star City right now as an outsider, probably not.
Yeah. It brings a wonderful angle to the book, a viewpoint, many viewpoints that just make the book even more valuable. I promised I would get to questions, so I'm going to do that. Let's see. The very first one that came in from Albert Hagee, and apologies for all the names I'm going to mangle over the course of the next few minutes, folks. What are some examples of what we would have to change about some of our everyday items due to the materials acting differently due to different wear and tear of the atmosphere and just the quality of the Martian terrain? I don't know if you consider yourself an expert in that area, but I know there are people working on these kinds of things because it's going to be tough.
Yeah. I consider myself an ignoramus in that area. I don't have, I don't know about, I mean, I know that the lunar regolith caused all kinds of problems. It's very sharp. It has static cling, so the astronauts' clothes were just filthy. I mean, you can see in photographs, they're just like, they look like they've been working in a mine, and the little particles would, affected the cameras. They got inside. But Albert didn't ask about lunar regolith. He asked about, that's just like how to deflect a question that you can't answer. So
I can answer part of it. I know.
Okay, good. Go.
Martian dust is not as sharp. It's not like razor blades. It'll simply kill you because it's poisonous. So half of one, 6 dozen of the other, as I say.
It's poisonous. What is the poisonous substance?
It has all kinds of compounds which are really nasty. They're what screwed up the at least 2 of the Viking lander experiments looking for life. And you don't have to dig down too far. You can go down a few inches and you're into some nice clean dirt, which we have to assume is what the Martian, Andy Weir's Martian, did before he planted his potatoes. But yeah, it's nasty. It's nasty up there. So
another problem with Andy's. No, I thought he got they only got one thing wrong: the wind there.
That way, which he did on purpose because he had to have a way to knock out his astronaut and get the others to take off. Andy, who preceded you here in the book club and is also a Planetary Radio friend.
Yes, I love Andy. We've done events together. Yeah,
as if he's just great.
Yeah.
God, people have heard this story, but I can't resist saying it. I once went on stage with Andy with a Martian survival kit, and it was a brown paper bag. And he took out first a potato, and then a roll of duct tape, which we'll come back to. And then he said, "There's nothing else in the bag." I said, "Yes, there is." He said, "Oh yeah, air." Anyway, so here are some other questions from Tim Lynch, who says, just so I don't have to keep them in my head for the whole talk, the silly one. Your footnotes were incredible. I have a footnote to one of your footnotes. You noted that if we were among the 50% who emit methane, that was fascinating, by the way, that you said there's a significant number of us humans who basically don't have gas.
Well, no, they have gas, but not methane.
Not methane. Okay.
A lot of hydrogen. Yeah. A lot of hydrogen. Yeah.
Friends could have fun placing matches in the appropriate locations. Well, based on my father's stories about his freshman year in college, one hallmate of his was particularly interested in drinking heavily and igniting his own farts.
Yeah.
First time that's word been said, has been said in these live streams. He went on to take very different pursuits. A fellow named, oh my God, I'm reading this cold, Dick Cheney.
Get out.
I can't vouch for this, folks. I'm not verifying these facts, but there it is from Tim Lynch, Dick Cheney.
Dick
Like to
Cheney
light them
liked to
when he
light
was a
his own
freshman.
farts.
Oh
That's
my
the best
God.
piece of information I've heard in a very long time.
It's right up there for me. No
Wow.
question about it. Oh my God.
I hope
Well,
there's I pray that there's video somewhere
we need that to be
of this.
true,
We
don't
need
we?
that. Yeah.
Um,
Scout's honor. Oh my
uh,
God.
that was such a shock. It made me forget the related question I was going to ask you about this. Oh, I know what it was.
Yes,
You
Albert's
actually,
lighting farts is the first step in rocket science. Yes.
yes, but also that you considered in the book, are you told the tale of what was the astronaut or was it an engineer who considered whether farts could propel you?
Yes, it was. Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, it's something people talk about. You know, if you're in zero gravity and you let go of voluminous fart, could that propel you? And there was an astronaut, and he's in the book. And now, of course, I'm forgetting his name. I spoke to
I'm
him, and
sorry, I
he's
can't help
like,
you.
he he's like, yes, we tried that. Um, that we did. We tried it, and he said at the point where he felt like he had a good volume, he let it rip, and he said the answer is no. It did not propel him across the mid deck, but he said I was wearing pants, and they thought that if he tried it nude, that
Yeah.
it might work, but it was a co-ed flight. So he didn't, he refrained from doing that. So, but the feeling was that, you know, the lungs hold more air, than the colon.
Yes.
So if it doesn't work by
Fortunately.
blowing, yeah, yes, fortunately, if it doesn't work by blowing, why would it work by farting?
Yeah.
So yes, I think Adam, this is how I met Adam Savage. Somebody put me in touch with him, and I said, I have something you guys need to test. You guys need to get up and do this on the Vomit Comet, and I think that they did. Yes.
I know they were on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So,
fascinating.
and we are still friends today, but it was farts
Good.
that brought us together.
What
Yeah,
could be better
we
than
get better. Yeah.
sharing a fart or two to bring you together with
Yeah.
Adam Savage? I was going to mention you ever hear of the song by Donovan P. Leach, the singer-songwriter?
I remember him.
The intergalactic laxative, which the
I know.
intergalactic laxative will get you from here to there. I won't do the rest
Okay.
of it. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's exactly in line with this.
Yeah.
Here's the other one that came in from Tim Lynch, the serious one. He says, this was an absolutely amazing read, given that it was published 13 years ago. I'm wondering, given the 13 years of science since then, what parts of the book, if any, would you update for a new edition? Well, it just so happens that she did
Okay. Yeah.
update
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
book. There is
Yes.
Packing
Yeah.
for Mars for kids, which I also highly recommend. I'm giving it to my grandson as soon as we are done today because I wanted
Excellent.
to hang on to it to show it off. It is a wonderful condensation of the
Yes.
original book, but you did update it as well.
Did
Somewhat.
I did. Yeah, a little bit, but really, you know, the things in the book are kind of, they're perennial, you know,
It's true.
it's still human bodies putting them up without gravity. You know, we're human beings, and we're still human beings. We have bodies and we have emotions, and those things change. So, yeah, no, I didn't, and a fair amount of the book is historical, going back to the early era where nobody knew what would happen, and you know, starting with the Albert flights and going through the early, you know, and then the chimps, and so you know, history doesn't change, physiology doesn't change, so not a lot. I can't think of what you know, a lot of the book is based, I mean, it's from the shuttle era, so there's references to the shuttle. So certainly if I redid the book, I you know, if we did a revised edition, I would try to take it, you know, at least remove the shuttle references. But really, you know, it's a book that was written in a certain time period, so it's hard to completely undo that, you know.
I think, and it didn't take a lot of work. I think that what did happen to update for kids works really well. Plus, it has all those great illustrations too. So.
Yeah, it was great photographs. Yeah, a lot of great historical photos. Yeah.
You may also made me think of the absolute horrors that they still put astronauts through, but that they were even more horrible, like what am I trying to think of? An order of magnitude, probably, in the early days, because they simply didn't know if we'd be able to survive even
Yeah.
an orbit in space.
No, it was an era of extreme hand wringing. It was people thinking, yeah, there were flights back in the early days where you would, they were parabolic flights on smaller aircraft where they would send a bunch of airmen up. There were questions like, will a human be able to initiate micturition, as they called it, pissing? Will that be possible? So they got a bunch of guys, had them drink copious amounts of water, sent them up on a parabolic flight, and like, go ahead, piss. Can you do it? Or swallow. Would people be able to swallow? There was a question of, will the eye change shape? Will you be able to see? I mean, there was an eye chart on, I think it was the early Mercury, but some of the very first human flights, they had like a Snelling classic eye chart to can you still see? Does anything happen to your vision? Is the eyeball changing? Nobody knew. It's kind of, gravity is this kind of a primary force, and you take that away, and what happens? And you can, they threw some monkeys up there, the sad Albert series, Albert 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and eventually changed the names to Michael and Patricia, which seemed to do the trick. But the poor Alberts, it was, heart rate. They were monitoring their heart rate and their breathing. Is that what's going to happen up there? We don't know. Yeah.
Just amazing what people went through. And you went through a little bit of, I mean, what was not the vomit comet, you did that too, but you might call it the vomit chair. Didn't they spin you around?
Yes. The rotating chair. Holy crap. I mean, I'm on a rotating chair here,
Yeah,
but
me too.
The difference is that the rotating chair is going faster. And as it's rotating, you're doing this with your head. And on the first up and down, you start to feel terrible. It is a very, very effective simulation / torture device. And so, yeah, and there was early on, there was like almost like a rotisserie spit where they would have somebody strapped along, like lengthwise rotating. This was in Pensacola. They had a lab. Rusty Schweikert was the poor guinea pig for a lot of that stuff, the Apollo astronaut. So yeah, that not a pleasant experience.
Poor Rusty.
I know. I have on the Rusty Schweikert. Sorry to cut you off. I just have to say I don't have it here, but I have a signed by Rusty Schweikert emesis basin. Do you know what that is? An emesis basin is, and if you're going to throw up in the hospital, they give you this little kidney-shaped plastic bowl that you're supposed to puke into.
I didn't know it had that name, so thank you.
Yeah. Yes, an emesis basin. Anyway, it's signed by Rusty Schweikert, the poster child for space sickness. Yeah.
I have a fun photo of Rusty and myself that I'll describe another time. But several people in the discussion online that preceded this live event talked about how relieved they were to learn from you that barfing in your helmet during extravehicular activity probably won't kill you. It may not be pleasant, but it probably won't kill you.
It probably won't kill you, but it is dangerous in that you don't want to get stomach acid in your eyes. So if you barf, they won't kill you. The suits, the EVA suits are designed to deal with that because of the airflow coming down, which you guys know because you talked about it. But that just, the extremes to which NASA went in terms of what ifing, like what if, okay, we better check this out. What if you puke in 0G, and then the truth is, if you, without gravity, then you have surface tension, it's going to cling. And what if it clings to your eye? What if it clings to your mouth and you choke? So they're like, let's get some, what was it? Progresso soup. I think they used as the simulant, but that kind of stuff, just floats my boat. I don't know. I love the nitty gritty details of, like, how do we test this? What do we do? What are we going to use as the simulant? And let's be sure. And I mean, it's all an abundance of caution because it's just so many, there's so many unknowns. There's so many things you have to think about uh, when you talk about sending somebody up into a new environment like that. Yeah. So
I promised someone in the community, and I apologize, I forget your name, but somebody wondered and wanted me to ask you, do you know if they are still using cadavers to test the limits of humans and, facing
yeah.
the various strains of space travel?
The only cadaver test that I came across while I was working on the book was the one with they were testing for an off nominal capsule splashdown. Like if it's rough seas and the capsule comes down on the side, will that impact cause the restraint, the side of whatever it is to smash into the arm and to
Yeah.
the extent that it would break the bone. And there wasn't any way to do that on a regular crash sled with a regular dummy, because the dummies are designed for a head-on impact or a side impact, but not the impact of a capsule coming down and somebody wearing a spacesuit. So there really wasn't any other way to do it but to use a cadaver. I haven't heard of. I mean, I'm not in touch with those folks now, so I don't know if they've done any other. But there's every now and then there is something comes up where there really isn't any other way to get the answer. So that was fascinating, and it was also something NASA really didn't want me there for. They said they said no many times over, just because they didn't really have a solid reason. And so finally the guys at Ohio State said, you know what, just show up. And I did just show up, and the researchers came in and I introduced myself, and they then ran down to where the students were wiring up the cadaver. They ran down and said, don't speak to her. And then ran in and called the NASA Public Affairs office and said, Mary Roach is here. And the woman at Public Affairs wisely said, oh, just talk to her. I think that realizing this scene will probably be in the book either way.
Yes.
So whether or not I'm standing on the sidelines from a distance, unable to speak to them, or whether I'm actually able to talk to them about what they're doing. I think that she realized that, and I'm not sure why they were so. I think anytime it's just like NASA doesn't like death, and I don't blame them, because I mean, they're taxpayer funded. When something goes wrong,
it's bad for the budget.
It's bad. It's just really bad for the budget and for everything. So just they'd rather people steer clear even of research that touches on it tangentially, like what if it's an off nominal capsule landing and the person's arm breaks and whatever. They just rather not have attention focused there, and I understand that, but I went anyway.
I'm glad you
It was fascinating. It was really interesting. Yeah.
It sounds like it. Here's one from Jeremy Kokal. A loose quote from the book. He says, life has to continue having some of the pleasures and comforts we know. We can't sacrifice them all. They must be built, however possible, into a mission. So his question, so is NASA and or other space agencies admitting to this now, especially for, he adds, sexual activity? Or as the Michael Collins story that you shared notes on, and ignoring the human sex drive, is it still the official policy of NASA? This goes so far beyond sex, although of course we have to talk about that. I said we'd get to duct tape again. The fascinating bit in the book about astronauts insisting on having a kitchen table, a dining room table to sit at.
Yes. Yeah. That was amazing. I mean, a kitchen table makes no sense in zero G. I mean, everything floats off of it. So, why even bother? And initially on some of the first space labs, they didn't have a table. And the astronauts complained at the end. They said, we're human beings. And at the end of the day, we want to sit around a table and eat together. And so they put the table back. And it's got Velcro for, the suits have Velcro too. You could just sit and put the tray on your knee, but they're like, no, we want to sit around a table, and so they do. I'm reading this. I'm more convinced ever that Rogue stole Mary Roach's hairstyle. I'm going to say what style? I'm I'm getting it.
I'm not
I'm
looking at
getting
the
it
chat
cut
there.
in a week.
I'm having Amber taking care of me, so I think your hair looks just fine.
It's all coming off in a week.
Okay,
Anyway.
everybody's been waiting for it. They've been waiting at least 41 minutes and some people longer. Let's talk about sex in space. We don't often get to talk about sex at the
Sure, yes.
Planetary Society because planets don't have sex so far as we know. So thank you for this opportunity. I've heard of at least 1,000 uses for duct tape, but few that were as intriguing as the one that was mentioned to you.
Yeah. I, of course, was being me, was driven to get the answer to, surely some astronaut or cosmonaut has had sex in space. Please let it be the case that somebody tried it, but nobody's willing to go on record. The cosmonauts, the retired cosmonauts that I spoke to, were the closest in that they, to quote one of them, he goes, "Yes, people are always asking me, Sasha, how do you have sex in space?" And he goes, "Yes, of course, by hand."
Yeah.
And he also shared the story that at one point Russia was going to send up inflatable sex toys.
Oh God, I'd forgotten that.
But somebody said no, because if you send those up, then we're going to have to schedule time for you to use them, and we're not doing this. and I was like, is he joking? No, he seems to be completely serious. I mean, sometimes it's a little hard with this sort of Russian deadpan sense of humor. But my takeaway was that yes, he was being straightforward. That yes, in fact, there was some talk of sending up inflatable sex dolls, but that they didn't. But here, there's no one who goes on record, and I don't blame them, because if somebody they went on record, then they're going to be known as the person who's willing to talk about it. They'll be hounded by the press, and So, I mean, there was a married couple that flew on a shuttle mission. That's, I hope that they did. I can't imagine that they didn't, but they're not, especially if you're still an active astronaut. You're not going to admit that, because that's the last time you're going to fly. My understanding is that they got married secretly. Like, you're not supposed to be married.
That's
not
right.
supposed to be married, on a mission. Partly because the thinking is, your first commitment is to your partner, whereas it should be to the rest of the crew in the mission. Anyway, there's various reasons why they don't want people to be married, but these two were. So yeah, you got to think, right?
I'm hoping that some astronaut or cosmonaut or taikonaut on his or her deathbed is going to say, "Oh yeah, we did it." I don't know. May have to wait a while for that. And then the duct tape, of course, as a little bit of
the duct tape. Yeah. The duct tape was, yes, I was asking I forget which astronaut, but I was saying, because I spent some time trying to understand, zero gravity intercourse. I spoke to people who study marine mammals, seals, otters. How do they stay together? Because you come together and you're pushed apart. So if you don't have a mattress or a wall to push against, it's and so I asked that question, and the astronaut, and I'm forgetting which one, said, if nothing else, there is duct tape.
Thank God for duct tape.
Thank God for duct tape.
Yeah. So for those of you who are still with us, I bet everybody is, because this is just too good. Here's something from Jasmine Kazada. Mary, we kind of covered this. What inspired you to write Packing for Mars? Were there any specific moments or discoveries that sparked your interest in the topic of space exploration? And I would say, and this may be what she has in mind, not just, to write the book, but just, early on as a child, perhaps. I've always dreamt of being a writer. I wouldn't even know where to begin to make it, even be sold. Congrats, Jasmine says. But I don't know,
thanks.
where did you get your interest in space?
I think anybody who has any sense of curiosity is interested in space. I mean, I've always been interested. I'm the kind of person who, I love to travel, but I look at the blank spaces on the map, like the far reaches of Nunavut, Canada, or up just anywhere where there's nothing there. Yeah. I'm like, what's that like? What's it like there? I want to go there to the fringes, or this island in the middle of nowhere.
Devon Island, right?
Devon Island, yeah. Like those, that's what appeals to me, because it's unknown. It's not, it's there on the map, but there's no images of it. I don't know what's there. I want to go. And so that sense of curiosity and desire to explore something unknown, I think that's just in the human DNA. I don't think there's anything special about me. It was just plain old-fashioned curiosity. And then when I heard, talking to that astronaut, William Thornton, I think was his name, talking to him about okay, the toilet, this is something that works with gravity and water. Well, we don't have water flowing downhill. We don't have that. The whole system had to be rethought. And that was true of anything you put up there, any machine, except maybe a pencil, which the Russians like to, they're like the space pen, how ridiculous, right. We use a pencil. But just anything, including the human body, that you put up there has to be, reconsidered, rejiggered, rebuilt. And that's fascinating. So I don't think it's anything special about me. I'm just curious.
You're talking to the right crowd, of course, today. Here's something from Violet Paola. Sorry, Violet. Mary, what surprised you the most about the human aspects of space travel while researching the book?
What surprised me? What surprised me was that astronauts would describe weightlessness, and this ties into Allison's question I see up there. Was your weightlessness like the most fun you've ever had researching your book? Yes, it absolutely was. To be weightless was so amazing. Just the feeling and the weirdness of it. I would love to do it again. But what surprised me was that astronauts would talk about how annoying it was to float. Like you'd put something down because you're used to putting things down and then let go and it would float away, and that's the last time you'd see it, or you had to kind of like aim yourself and you would hit your head. And I was like, you're complaining about weightlessness? But like anything else, the novelty wears off pretty quickly, and then it becomes, there's annoying things about it. That just blew my mind, because it was, for me, I was so excited to be doing it. It took me a long time to get onto one of the NASA Vomit Comet flights, which you're not supposed to say Vomit Comet. No, sorry, NASA, the Weightless Wonder. Yeah. The Weightless Wonder. It was. I was so excited to be going up. It was a student flight, student flight opportunity, and I was covering it.
I feel so.
Their team. Yeah.
I feel so bad for that kid who was on that engineering team and started barfing as soon as they started doing the parabolas.
Before before we even did the first parabola, he was nauseous, and they gave him a shot, and they sort of took him off to the rear of the plane, because, as you can imagine, if there's vomit floating, and then when they go to the part where the pull out, where it's double gravity, you're going to get splatted with this kid's vomit at twice gravity, and that's not very pleasant. But the poor guy, I felt so bad for him. Yeah.
I also think of the other stories you told about other man-made or human-made objects floating in your spacecraft, your Apollo command module that you don't want to encounter.
Oh,
I
yes,
won't
yes,
go.
yes.
I won't
Yes.
even go there right now. Here's one from my colleague at the Planetary Society, who is a very proud, happy member of the book club. It's Mark Hilverda. Hi, Mary. Thank you for being here, for writing this book. Your research and chasing down primary sources is so appreciated. You cover so many topics that others might not even think of diving into. How do you decide which specific topics to pursue to great levels of detail? Across all your books, I suppose.
Yeah, I will in terms of what am I going to include a chapter on, it comes down to where can I get access? What, like, the fact that I was able to get to Devon Island, definitely going there. The fact that I was able to get onto a weightless flight, going there. But if I hadn't been able to get access, there wouldn't be that chapter, because I need to be there to kind of to see the details and to collect the details that make the chapter readable and accessible and fun for the reader. So what I'm able to get access to absolutely determines what's in the book. And what I want to get access to is just a product of my curiosity. And what am I most excited about going and doing? An example, there should be a chapter on radiation in this book, really. There's not a whole chapter on radiation. I touch on it here and there, cosmic radiation, solar radiation. What does that do? How much do we need to worry? That should be in the book, but there was a study an animal study being done. I forget now where, but I was like, do I want to go and sort of see some animals being irradiated? How do I make that a scene? How do I make that compelling? And so that didn't make the cut. And that's a criticism that I saw in, I think, one of the reviews, and that's fair criticism. And that's just my own bias for wanting to go where I know there'll be an interesting scene and it'll be fun for the reader. So that's how I decide.
Here's a great follow-up to that from Susan Stalker. She says, first, greetings from Kansas City, Missouri.
Hello.
KC. Thank you for providing so much information. I learned a lot from the book. My question is this: when you decide to write a book, what's the average ratio of knowledge you already have on the subject compared to the knowledge you need to seek out? And I'll just add, or that you discover accidentally that blows you away.
The knowledge that I already have.
Yeah. What do you know going into it?
No, I know nothing. Truly. I mean, I'm a kid. I didn't even see. I mean, I was born in 1959, so I was around for the moon landing. I didn't see it. I was over playing with the neighbors. I'm like, I don't care. All I knew going into this was what I mentioned early on. Like I knew about the video toilet, and that was interesting and compelling to me. I knew about eventually then I heard about the bed rest facility, but I knew that's it. I start at zero often with my books. I mean that, and for me, then I'm always, the whole book is a process of education, education in things, an education where everything is interesting to me. So but also it's a little treacherous because I'm always on thin ice. Like, am I going to get this right? I don't have the background. So, I gave the manuscript to somebody who had a background in space history, who was an engineer and had worked, I forget where he'd worked, but he read the whole thing and made very helpful comments, like just caught a bunch of little things, mostly little things, but embarrassing things. So
as far as I can tell, the science is perfect. You got the science.
Oh, I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. Because I don't know nothing going in. Nothing.
Well, you say it's education. It sure also, to me anyway, comes off as an adventure, at least a lot of it.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. It's such a joy to write a book like that. I loved writing this book. NASA Johnson Space Center was just a geek's playground for me. I'm like, oh, there's this thing where it simulates what it's like to push something without gravity, and there's just like, I got to get on a simulator and dock the shuttle with the ISS, like, a little bit of thrust here and there. I'm like, oh, I did it. So cool.
I
Just
hear it's
amazing.
not easy.
Actually, it is pretty easy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
I just a couple of other things from my part, and then I got one more for you that has come in, and you still have a couple of minutes here. I'll tell you what, you're okay with going a little bit past the hour here,
Sure.
Mary? Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I think of beyond space, or encompassing love of space exploration, space science, just science in general. Our boss, I steal the phrase from him all the time: the passion, beauty, and joy of science, of space. The PB&J, in other words. That has to be something that you feel and drives you.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. I can't understand when somebody says, I'm not really interested in science, because to me, that's like saying I have no interest in anything in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, just look out my window. I'm looking at, there's a car, there's a tree, there's a parking meter, there's sky. That's all science. Don't you want to understand what makes it tick?
Yeah.
You would have to have such a closed mind. I think it goes back to early science education. Like some educators are better than others in imparting that sense of curiosity and adventure in science. I had a physics teacher in high school who was fabulous. I mean, we had to plot orbits, with the sort of the string and the pin, and you've got the velocity and the pull of Earth, and it's a vector, and I still remember that. I mean, that stayed with me. And it was helpful writing this book. But he had so much enthusiasm for physics, and physics is all around. It's like he'd be like, when you're on the bus, and then you look out the window, and it looks like the other bus is moving, but it's you, or like the Doppler effect when a siren goes by.
Yeah.
All those things stayed with me. I hear a siren, I'm like, Doppler effect. It's just simple. It's simple curiosity and engagement with the world around you, and wanting to understand how things work, and also respecting things, plants, animals, the environment, the sky. Just having respect for how complex and beautiful these systems are. Yeah.
It's also why I'm very grateful to you for now having this new edition, Packing for Mars for Kids.
Yeah.
And, it's something we're big on. We're run by Bill and I, our Planetary Academy, which is just about, if my grandson and step granddaughter are any indication, kids are just eating it up.
Yeah.
Kids are natural scientists. I'm not the first to say that.
Yes, kids are saying all the time. My grandkids are like, why is there this? I mean, they have the most amazing questions because they're curious, and nothing has distracted them from that curiosity and desire to know, why does that do that? Why? How? Tell me. I want to know.
So my grandson, like most kids wanted to try some space ice cream, astronaut ice cream, which is pretty terrible. But I was thinking back to when I was a kid, and I wanted it because, space. And you talk about this. There was a time in my life when instant breakfast was how I started every morning, and space food sticks. I mean, my God, space food sticks. They were disgusting, but they were from space.
They were in my lunchbox every day. Pillsbury, I think, made them space food sticks.
Yes,
they grew, and I never knew what they were, but like sticks.
No one did.
They're supposed to go through the helmet port and be something you could eat while you have a full, protective suit. A pressure suit. You could stick the through the port and eat them. But they were weird, right? They tasted weird, but I kind of got used to them. Yeah. And instant breakfast, my brother, Carnation instant breakfast. What was it? What was the thing? There was the ad where the guy goes, all muscle and no fat.
Yeah, sure.
All muscle and no fat. So weird, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. amazing fact from the book number 940, uh, veterinarians who were
Yeah.
designing the menu for
Yes.
early astronauts. Who
You
who
know,
made that mistake?
yeah, but when you think about it, it kind of made sense because, and this is something I learned later, that the people who design pet food, one of the things that they have in mind is that we need to make this something easy for the owner to pick up. We
Mm,
need the food to come out in a form that will be easy to pick up with a bag. So, and with the astronauts, they wanted it to low fiber, low residue, because especially early on, there's no toilet. So like the ideal was give them something to plug them up, give them something so processed that they won't have to take a crap in the bag.
yeah.
And so the veterinarians are like, oh, we can handle that. That was so interesting. So interesting.
I have one more question from one of our participants, one of our members, and you've already answered it, but it was such a special experience for you, and I imagine for most people who do it. Allison Dillon asks, Mary, was your flight experiencing weightlessness the most fun you've had researching any of your books? If not, what was?
It was. It really was. It really was the most fun thing I did in the under the guise of research. Yes,
Yeah.
it wasn't because and it was I think I describe it in the book. It was a you are Superman. You're just pushing off from a wall and flying across a room. Like you're doing the Superman thing. Also, you don't, all of a sudden your organs inside you have no weight, and
Mhm.
that weight is something you're not aware of normally. But when it's gone, it's this kind of physical euphoria. It is so deeply relaxing, far more so. I mean, sometimes astronauts say, "Oh, it's like being in water." Mm-mm. No, it's better than that. I mean, similarly, you have, you don't have the weight that you normally do, but it's more than that. I recommend it. Anybody can go on a zero G flight, a microgravity flight out of, there's a place, what is it, Zero G Core in Las
Yeah, Zero G
Vegas?
Corp. They move around actually.
Oh, do they? Yeah.
They visit various areas and give you a chance. Costs a little bit, of course.
It does, but it would, like the cost of a business class flight. It's not that. Is it
Maybe a little more,
more?
but
Is it
not that much
more?
more.
Yeah.
It might be. I think I've only looked at it. They have a special rate for journalists. I
Uh-huh.
got to do it because it was that statement that one of the astronauts told you that, yeah, it's really, no, I'm sorry. The astronaut said it's like in water, and you said, no, it's not.
No,
I
there's
love
nothing.
being underwater, but it was that knowing that, no, everything inside you
Yeah, yeah,
is
yeah.
weightless. The
It
organs
it
is
n
responsible.
I mean, yeah, it's a little pricey, but, a
Mm.
lot cheaper than, what is it, $250,000 to go on a suborbital flight with Virgin Galactic, you know?
More now, I think. Yeah.
More, is it
Yeah.
more now?
I
Yeah,
think so.
I
Yeah.
I would, I recommend it. It's so wonderful, and if you go with that company, you don't have, I mean, when I went, they kept saying, "You gotta hang on to the strap," right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so at the end, I'm like,
You cheated.
fuck it, I'm letting go of the so I let go and I'm zooming across, and the boss guy, like when I got across to the other side, grabbed me and pulled me down. Like, you're a spoil sport.
Really.
They yeah, they didn't
I would
like
have to
me.
do the
Nobody
same.
on that flight liked me,
There is a
but I don't
wonderful,
care.
not now, there is a wonderful music video by the group OK
Yes,
Go.
I've
You've
seen
seen
it.
it.
I've
Yeah.
seen it. I love
Done
all of
on,
theirs, but that's a great one.
yeah,
Yep.
they're friends of ours actually at the
That
Planetary
I
Society.
went on,
They do good stuff.
because they did a lot of kind of flipping around. I wonder if they felt nauseous, because one of the things they say, keep your head still.
Yeah.
I did the Superman thing, but I wasn't doing any of that because I didn't want to end up in the back of the plane with Pat throwing up. Yeah.
Got to do it. Listen, any of you out there, want to join me?
You should do a group. I mean, maybe it's cheaper if
You
you book the
should.
whole plane.
You
Yeah.
know, it might be that. Wouldn't that be an interesting thing to offer our members? I'm going to
You
make a
should.
note of that.
I highly recommend it.
I
And I'm
will.
not getting paid by those people. They never gave me a free flight.
No, I will. I used to. I don't know if I still do, but I used to know a couple of the people at Zero G. I think I will propose that. They must have get
Yeah.
proposals like that for group
They would give you a
flights. Of
discount.
course they would.
I'm sure.
Of course they would. We're the
Yeah.
Planetary Society.
Totally.
I'm going to
I'm
wrap
coming
up.
with you, and I'm coming
Oh,
with you.
would you? Wouldn't that
Yeah.
be cool?
I
Oh
would love
God,
to do
that'd
it
make
again.
it
I would
twice
love
as
to do that
worthwhile.
again. Yeah.
All right. I'm
Yep.
going to keep that in mind. Hold you to it. Before we say goodbye, your latest 2021 Fuzz, When Nature Breaks the Law. I see it also reached #1 on a lot of lists.
Yes, that's a book about people and animals getting in each other's way. It's basically a human animal conflict, human wildlife conflict. But I broke it down by crime. So there's, murder, manslaughter, breaking and entering, littering, trespassing. I mean, animals do it all. They obviously don't know what the laws are and are not criminals. But for me, it was just a way to kind of repackage it and
Brilliant.
look at what do we do about that. How do you handle that in a way that's fair? So another corner of science. Yeah.
The latest in this long line and hopefully continuing line of very entertaining science bestsellers from Mary Roach. I'm not quite done. I'm back to Packing for Mars. You take us through so much hardship and pain and possibility of death, and yet you arrive at this wonderful conclusion that
Yeah.
says that it's all worth the trouble. In fact, maybe much more than worth the trouble. Do you have the book there in front of you?
Hang on. Hold on.
I meant to remind you when we practiced earlier today. And I forgot.
I have it. Hold on.
Okay. Stay tuned, folks. And we will be back. As I said, our book next month, you can't quite get it yet, is Lou Friedman, Dr. Louis Friedman, my old boss, the executive director emeritus of the Planetary Society, who has written Alone But Not Lonely. It comes out on September 19th. But to finish off our book today, I asked Mary, I'm asking again, just read the last paragraph, because I think it really captures that PB&J of why we humans want to do this.
The last paragraph of the book?
Yeah, please.
Is that it? Okay. The nobility of the human spirit grows harder for me to believe in. War, zealotry, greed, malls, narcissism. I see a backhanded nobility in excessive, impractical outlays of cash prompted by nothing loftier than a species joining hands and saying, I bet we can do this. Yes, the money could be better spent on Earth, but would it? Since when has money saved by government redlining been spent on education and cancer research? It is always squandered. Let's squander some on Mars. Let's go out and play.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mary. That was.
Oh, thank you, Matt. And thanks to everybody.
I told people this would be at least as much fun as we had 13 years ago. We'll have to post that link again to that show from 13 years ago when Packing for Mars was new. If you've been foolish enough to listen to all of this, I hope you enjoyed it, but have not read the book, you still can get it from all the usual places, Packing for Mars. And now for the kids in your life, Packing for Mars for Kids. Thanks, Mary. It's really a delight.
Much, Matt. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us again. And we will see you here in the book club again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.